Konnichiwa, Samurai James here. Onimusha Anime. I absolutely loved these games as a kid, and I tell you what, I've played them as an adult too. The original Onimusha has been remastered. It's up and available on Steam, including with updated controls, not the older tank style. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's nice and cheap. Check it out. It might be a good intro to the series. Dawn of Dreams, by far my favorite. Soki was just amazing. Samanosuke from the original game and the third game, very cool. You know, he's what got me into this series with it. The second game has a different protagonist. And yeah, there's 3 different protagonists across 4 games. And how many of them do we see in the Onimusha anime series? None. Okay, so if the main characters from all 4 games, those 3 main characters aren't in the anime, then who's the main protagonist of the anime? Musashi. Weeb. What are you on about? Yes, it's a stainless steel wall hanger. Yes, this is a video about an anime. Anime is Japanese. Musashi is Japanese. He was a historical person. Onimusha video. Shinto Oni Katana. Let's get this guy out of here. Alright, now that we got that dealt with, maybe it'll be nice and quiet for the rest of the video. Onimusha Anime. This is going to be spoiler free. First off, absolutely loved it. And no, it does not follow much of anything of the games. The 4 games on the PlayStation 2 that are considered the core series, Musashi is not anywhere in them. He does appear in a spin-off game called Onimusha Blade Warriors, and he does appear in the manga where he actually meets one of the people from Onimusha Dawn of Dreams later on and ends up actually getting into a fight with her. But aside from that extremely loose tie-in, the anime series is at best loosely based on the game. As far as Musashi goes, a lot of quotes get attributed to him. I don't know how many are actually accurate, but since he seems to be just a very popular person that pops up in general overall culture, especially improvement things, since he wrote the book Goren no Sho, the Book of 5 Rings, which I have and I've read, he pops up for a lot of things, and yeah, here's, a shirt about it. It may seem difficult at first, but everything is difficult at first. Now, the story is very well done. It's 8 episodes. They're about a half hour each, so you can watch this in like 4 hours or less. It's not a big time commitment to sit down and watch. And there were a few plot twists that, I did not expect, but one in particular had me, which made for a much better ending than I was kind of expecting towards it once it got about 2/3 of the way through. Kind of seemed like you thought you knew where it was going, but, spoiler free, it absolutely did not go where I thought it was going. You might be able to pick up on it, but I don't watch a lot of TV or anything like that, so this one really caught me by surprise. Now, of course, with that plot twist towards the end, it made for a much better ending, and I really appreciated the direction that they went with it versus what I thought the original direction was going to be. So, really, really cool twist. Helped really get me engrossed into the anime and actually start to care a little bit more about Musashi as a character and the overall story. Now, are you thinking to yourself, I'm not sure if I'd enjoy this anime if I haven't seen the games, I don't know the people, I don't know what's going on. Don't worry, it really doesn't matter that much. There's a few loose tie-ins to the game, but for the most part, it stands alone as an anime series if you've never played the games at all. There's a couple things that might make a little bit more sense when you're watching it, having played the games, but overall, they're not extremely pivotal to the story, and it's one of these things that you'll understand in the series. You'll just understand a little bit more of what they're alluding to if you've played the games. One of the core things to the games and also the anime as well is kind of the good versus bad, the Oni versus the Genma. So Oni, Onimusha, yes, the Onimusha is on the side of the Oni, and then the Genma tend to be the bad guys. Yeah, it's fairly cut and dried in the video games. It's a lot more straightforward of the good versus the evil. In the anime, it's a little bit more of a gray area with that, and I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to spoil the series for you if you haven't seen it yet. But it did lead to some interesting things where in the video games, there's not a lot of character development to the main characters because they're meant to be action video games. In the anime series, there's a decent amount of character growth for quite a few of the characters in there, especially when you take into consideration it's 8 episodes about a half hour long. Onimusha 1 has sometimes been called Resident Evil Japan. It came out around the same time. It had similar controls, the way that the game was presented, the way that you navigated around and everything else. Not just in the way that you controlled the character, but going from screen to screen into pre-rendered areas had a very similar feel to Resident Evil. And the way that some enemies showed up had a little bit more of a theatrics to it. It was much more of a horror type feeling. The anime keeps that same sort of spirit to it. It's not a horror series anime, but there are a few parts where I can kind of see where they took some inspiration from the original game. Now, in the 4 main games from the series, there's an Oni gauntlet that the protagonist gets. They put it on, they use it to absorb souls, that's how they power up your equipment and everything else. The anime series also has the gauntlet, but it's not really as much of a focal point as it is in the games. Not that it's a strong focal point within the story, but it's just always there throughout the gameplay. And in the anime, it feels a little bit weird that it's on, off, and it's not a consistently worn thing. That's not really a spoiler, so I don't feel bad about mentioning that one, but it's just one of those divergences from the game, and it works fine in the context of the anime, but I wish he would have just kept it on throughout the series, and it would have felt like it was a little bit more of a close tie-in to the original source material. Now, in all the games, there's a main protagonist, and there's, what I basically would call side support staff. There's a couple other people that you play as in the first and the third one. In the third game, you alternate between 2 people. In the first game, there's a few moments where you have a second person. The second and the fourth game have multiple characters, and they get a little bit more focal time along with the main character. So it's nice to see that in the games it went with that, and also in the anime series, they kept to that same sort of thing. Musashi is the main character, but there is a group of people. Musashi is not the end-all, be-all, powerful person that is able to just do everything on his own. He relies on the people that are in his group to get some of the other things done. And it's nice to see that. That really helps with character development. It helps with storytelling. You don't feel like it's just very flat, like when you watch Superman or Batman or something, like it's one person and they just do everything. And to me, that's always been incredibly boring. So I appreciated that there was some variety to who the anime series focuses on. Musashi remains the main person throughout the thing, but they give those other characters some time to really shine a little bit and have a little bit of development as well. Now, there's kind of a mixed opinion of the people who are big into the Onimusha series. Some people are saying that the anime is bad because it doesn't have the same characters, it doesn't have the same feeling, and while I can kind of understand that, I would have liked to have seen something that's a little bit closer to the original material, even if it wasn't the same people, just to be closer to the same style of the games and all the established ways that they had done things there. The thing that I like best about this is Onimusha has been gone for a long time. There have been no games, aside from remastering of the original, since the PlayStation 2 generation. We're on PlayStation 5 now, and I don't even have a PlayStation 5. I got a PlayStation 4 years and years ago and don't play it that much, except for Ghost of Tsushima and Neo 2. But anyway, side subject there. It's been a long time since these games came out. And my hope is that if the anime gets some traction, it gets some fan following behind it, hey, Capcom, if you're listening, remake the games, or even better, make an Onimusha 5. Take it, spin it off from the anime series. Make a game about Musashi, tie into the anime series. I would absolutely love to see something like that. And now as far as something else that's been annoying a lot of the longtime fans of the series, nobody from the game made a cameo in it. Well, the anime series is set well after Sekigahara, which is a historical event. The end of the third game is Honnouji Temple, which is, decades before Sekigahara. So as far as the anime goes, as far as the timeline of events, Musashi would be very, very young. During the course of Dawn of Dreams, we find out that it's about 15 years after Honnouji. And at Honnouji, Musashi, of course his real birth date is a little bit, fuzzy, but if we go by what we assume that it is historically, Musashi would have been 2 or 3 years old during the third game. Non-existent, of course, during the first and second. When we get to Dawn of Dreams, he would have been a teenager, so unless we wanted some sort of angsty teen anime, which, hey, I'm not about that. If that's your thing, cool, you do you and enjoy it, but I don't want to see some angsty Musashi as a teenager in there, so I understand why there wasn't really any cameos from the original games. Now, on top of that, in the anime, he is clearly not young Musashi. He's probably in his 40s, maybe his 50s, which I kind of like seeing. In the Assassin's Creed games, I really enjoyed the third one in the middle of the original trilogy, where Ezio was older. You go through it at the beginning, he's trying to, run and hide around stuff, and as you go through, there's actually dialogue where he's like, this was so much easier when I was younger, and, I'm getting too old for this. And it's cool to see somebody that's not just, kind of like I alluded to earlier, not like a very young, super powerful, can do everything on their own. It's cool to see him a little bit older, a little bit more apprehensive on a few things, thinking things through a little bit more, not just immediately jumping to the sword. Now, the closest thing we get to a cameo isn't even really a cameo, but cool little fun fact here. Akio Atsuka, who voiced Nobunaga in the actual game series, is the same person that voices Musashi in the anime. I kind of thought the voice was familiar, and I didn't even pick up until about halfway through the series. I was like, this kind of sounds familiar, and I can't quite place it. So yeah, I cheated. I used the internet, I looked it up, and I was like, the voice of Nobunaga from the original game. So no cameos, but same voice actor. That was kind of cool. Now, the art style to the series, of course, that's subjective. It seems to be CGI generated, 3D type stuff, but I liked the feel to it. It's a little bit dark, it's a little bit gritty, and, I pick on medieval movies and their, dark filter. This had sort of that same appearance to it, where it's a little bit more subdued with the colors, not as many things are vibrant. But at the same time, the scenes that are vibrant actually help them stand out more, because it's a bit more of a pop compared to something that's just got all color all the time. So I know that's kind of a divided topic, but I really enjoyed the way the artwork played out. And it had that same sort of feeling of Toshiro Mifune, just inspired by, in the same vein of, I obviously loved Ghost of Tsushima, which is, heavily inspired by Akira Kurosawa films. And this just had that same sort of feeling to it. So even though it's an anime series, it didn't feel like, haha, Japanese schoolgirl anime, which, again, if that's your thing, do you, hey, more power to you. Not quite my thing. Yes, I watched Death Note. Yes, I enjoyed Death Note. Misa Misa. Okay, whatever. Moving on from that. I enjoyed the artwork to the series. I'm definitely going to rewatch it again when I get a little bit of time. And it's good overall. There were some complaints about it. People said it didn't match the original feel of the games. But I feel like it matched what it was intended to try to replicate, which is those Toshiro Mifune styles. And Musashi is also modeled off of him in character and a little bit of his mannerisms. So I feel like it held close to what it was being inspired by. So yes, it's an Onimusha series, but again, it ties looser to the games and just more of tying into a few classic Japanese things. And since I like a lot of those things, it really resonated with me. Now, if you know a little bit about Musashi, and most people that are into katanas and anime and stuff like that do, I think the anime is going to click a little bit more with you than it would somebody who doesn't know anything about Musashi historically. The anime itself will stand up fine, and things will still seem fine at a story level, but I think you get a little bit deeper appreciation for where the storyline goes and where the plot twists and turns go if you know something about him historically. Now we end on a cliffhanger. Is there going to be a season 2? I don't know. Wouldn't be past Netflix to just be like, hey, here's a cliffhanger, wait for the next season, and then never actually put it out, because that's what they do sometimes. But I really hope we get a second season. I would also really like to see it still focus around Musashi. Maybe, tie back to some of the things from the first season, but have a second season with Musashi. I enjoyed him as a character, so I'd like to see him in a second season with that, and I also think that would help strengthen the chance of getting an Onimusha 5 that actually features Musashi in it. So absolutely would love to see season 2. I appreciate how they left off the cliffhanger in it too. It was a little bit disappointing in a way, but at the same time I understand exactly what they did. I wish they would have fleshed out the cliffhanger a little bit more, but the way that they left it made perfect sense. Now, as for season 2 and more tie-ins, well, Onimusha Dawn of Dreams, the way that ends up with Soki is very much a ending where he could just appear in the anime series and it wouldn't seem weird to it. The other person who follows along with him for a lot of the game, Jubei, she's the one that Musashi meets in the manga. So Jubei would be older, but the way that Dawn of Dreams leaves off actually left off open-ended, as if they could have had an Onimusha 5, but they just never did. So there's certainly ways that they could tie it into the anime for this as well. Maybe season 2 is going to feature Musashi, and maybe we're going to flip back a decade or two and revisit when he was a little bit younger and would have been more likely to have met the people from Dawn of Dreams. Or maybe they're just going to come back and Jubei is going to be older, just like Musashi is older. But there's still lots of potential to have some tie-in to the games and maybe get a little bit closer to some of the source material as we get into season 2. If there is a season 2, please be a season 2. And what other kind of source material stuff would be cool to see? Well, since this is kind of a Toshiro Mifune type feel, yes, there's some fantasy elements to it, but we don't see really as many of the Genma monsters as we do in the games. There's magical weapons in the game. There's a fire sword. There's a thunder sword. Those things don't appear in here. The wind staff doesn't appear in here. And that's just stuff that shows up in the first game. So it would be really cool to actually see stuff show up in the anime. And yeah, this that I've got sitting right here, this is a replica of the Onimusha sword. I've had this for about 20 years. Yeah, it's stainless steel. Yeah, it's a wall hanger. blah blah blah, not a real sword. Don't care, it's from the game, I enjoy it. If you like wall hangers, do your thing. I've got wall hangers, I've got wall hangers, I've got antiques, I've got, modern replicas. If you like swords, enjoy it. It's perfectly fine to have some wall hangers. They have their place, and this is one that I happen to enjoy. But, hey, would be kind of cool to see the sword actually show up in the anime series somehow as well. So what do you think? You interested in watching the series? Let me know in the comments down below. If you already watched it, let me know in the comments what you thought down below and what you think. If you're still not interested in it, that's totally fine. What I focus on my channel is primarily swords and weapons and armor and stuff, but I do hit up video games and anime on occasion, especially when they have samurai type themes like this. But for now, this is going to be Samurai James, and thanks for watching, and sayonara.